So I'd like to have them tell you a little bit about their role back in World War II.
How do you do? First of all, this cap represents the branch of service I was in, which was combat engineering. If you would have seen somebody in a cap like this with a blue braid, he would be infantry. Our job was mostly building bridges across destroyed areas, burying troops, camouflage, especially, which was my expertise, and support groups of that sort. To begin with, you have to understand, the American people are not a warlike people. If you look back into history, you're going to find out that the Germans had their mythology in warlike.
Need it.
Without people such as the Gaiers, some of us probably wouldn't even be here today. So we owe them a very real debt of gratitude. And in a very real way, we are connected with them. So I'd like to have them tell you a little bit about their role back in World War II.
How do you do? First of all, this cap represents the branch of service I was in, which was combat engineering. If you would have seen somebody in a cap like this with a blue braid, he would be infantry. Our job was mostly building bridges across destroyed areas, burying troops, camouflage, especially, which was my expertise, and support groups of that sort. To begin with, you have to understand, the American people are not a warlike people. If you look back into history, you're going to find out that the Germans had their mythology in warlike people, like if you read their books, Thor was one of their main heroes, and the Japanese had their samurai. Before Japan became united, they had, each warlord had his own army, and they were used to fighting and killing each other. We had our groups come over, impoverished for the most part. They came from areas where they were kept down, they had no liberty at all, and they came to this country happy to make a home. We'll now go into the main subject of what this is all about. I was conscripted or drafted. Conscripted is another word for drafted. We were picked, when we signed up, we were given numbers. And I was picked in the second round in July of 1941. We had to assemble in Hartford. We got on a train at the Union Station. I don't know if any of you know where that is, downtown Hartford. We were taken to a fort in Massachusetts near the Rhode Island border. There we were given uniforms and all equipment. Now, when we were called GI, does anybody know what GI stands for? Yes.
Yeah, I don't.
No. Government issue. Everything we had was government. This was supplied by the government. My rifle, my ammunition, everything came from government.
Excuse me, sir, we have some late arrivals. They're ready to hear.
Okay.
Was our intermission?
I step.
You put your turn.
Where can I go? Where can I go?
Back there.
You won't be able to get out.
It's all right.
He wants me to come outside, but no, I'm sorry. He's doing pretty well. I feel it's
All right, let him. You're just trying to.
well,
talk about how one of the pivotal
Daddy, only if he's, talked it out, because there's not much time. We have a half hour. There are 100 kids going to be in here. They have an auditorium.
high school they do.
And I got your anniversary card in here, so remind us.
Melissa,
Oh my God, I think it's going to be in your lap. The nicest kids here.
A quick summary for those who just came in. I will repeat a little bit. We are a peaceful nation, with the exception of two horrible experiences, Vietnam and Korea, where we have no business being. It's fully understood now, but at the time we were worried about the communist menace, which was overblown because eventually they fell on their faces, and it should never have happened. But in any event, the Germans and the Japanese were brought up with a military tradition, with their samurai in Japan and their mythology in Germany, such that we could expect this. Unfortunately, the nations did not get together soon enough to stop World War II, which they could have done when they saw the menace growing and the militarization beginning. You have to understand also that at that time most of the world was going through a depression. We here were also going through that. We survived, but the Germans, because of their loss in World War I, were subjected to very harsh treaty obligations, wherein a bushel of their marks, which was their money, could just about buy a loaf of bread. Under those circumstances, it was very apparent that if the right man came who could stir them up into great passions with the idea that they were superior to others and they could evolve their own position in life and subject the world, which they did. Hitler, by the way, was not welcome. He came in with his goons, but when he ignited them with his passion, they followed him because he had early successes, and he had good generals, and he overrode through Belgium. He crossed behind a very magnificent fort line, which was called the Maginot Line, that the French had built, but unfortunately, like mistakes in history, their guns could not turn around at very great angles. So he circled it and came in behind them through Belgium. And in that way, France, but let's go back to what I was about to say about my particular situation and how it came about. I was working in a hardware store at the time when my draft number came up. I was brought to a Union Station downtown Hartford. A group of us were sent by train to Massachusetts. We were outfitted in uniforms, and then on another train we were sent down to Fort Belvoir for our military training. I might digress for a minute and tell you of an incident which, I thought I heard something, which highlights some of the problems that were precipitated in this way. There was one fellow, the lieutenant at the fort, had to have me watch because the fellow, every other word was, "I'm deserted." His folks were in a horrible situation. His mother, a widow, had no means of support. and thus he felt that it was injustice for him to be drafted. And you're going to find out in every war there are injustices when you're dealing with such magnitude of people. You have to understand there were 16 million of us who were pulled out of our regular occupations, with the exception of those they allowed to stay in college until they finished, and in other such occupations. At any rate, we came down to Belvoir, Fort Belvoir, which is in Virginia, below Washington, D.C. There, we went through 12 weeks of training, grenades, rifle fire, crawling under wire. It's not as glamorous as you're led to believe on TV. The machine guns which shot over us were set on bars so that they couldn't come down and get you. So it was really laughable in a way. It was more a case of getting used to the gunfire and the dynamite exploding intermittently in different areas where they had dug out holes. So once you got used to that, it was really a lark, but it gave you an idea of what we could expect later down the line. We had to go out on full field pack, 60 pounds of heavy weights on our backs, work all day out into the field, and mind you, in July and August, very hot down in Virginia. We would then have to run back to after a full day, run back to the barracks. They gave us 5 minutes to undress, shower, get dressed, and stand in formation. After that, you were expected to go to dinner. You can imagine how many of us just were thankful to lie on our cots and give up and forego the dinners, which we didn't appreciate